Welcome to the First Property Buyer Show, your go-to podcast for expert advice, market insights, and real-life stories to help you buy your first home with confidence.
Hello and welcome to the First Property Buyer Show, the podcast that is with you every step of the way during your property journey. I'm Emilie Lauer, Deputy Editor here at Momentum Media, and today we are going to shed light on property inspection, building and pest reports, and everything you should take into consideration before buying property. For that, I am joined by the experts. Nicole and Michael Kowalczyk from Tailored Property Group. Guys, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thanks for having us.
Thank you, Emily. It's a pleasure.
Look, the First Property Buyer Show always starts kind of in the same way, and that's by asking my guests to tell me about their first property. So I know you guys have a portfolio now, but let's go back down memory lane and let's talk about the first, which is, the foundation of the rest, I guess.
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, I can't really say that the first property was probably the one that laid the foundation, but it certainly taught us a lot of key valuable lessons. We're pushing. Back when I was 21, I had put forth a deposit of about 5%, saved up about $30,000, which took a little while, and got myself to a point where I was like, I've got to bite the bullet. Coming from humble beginnings, I knew that if I didn't get in sooner rather than later, then what I saw through properties that it kept rising, and bit the bullet in 2010 and bought a off-the-plan 2-bedroom townhouse in Western Sydney. That, after about 12 months, did fairly well. And to my surprise, then that was the springboard into property 2. And naturally, I did the same thing, but the results didn't yield as favorably. And there were many, many lessons learnt from that, and kind of went back to the drawing board as to, well, what can we learn from all of this based on the thoughts, the decisions that were made, to then continue building the portfolio. And then Nicole joined me on number 3, and that was her kind of first purchase per se. Yeah,
very different purchase. We decided to do a different strategy, and that was renovation. So we bought something old. Like probably most first-timers, they think of purchasing in places that they can get to. And we wanted to renovate it ourselves. A lot of lessons learnt.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about that later on.
But at the end, that laid the foundation probably for us really taking a learning curve on what other trades should do versus what you should do, versus now we are a completely different mindset, purely because we're probably more on the advanced investor side. And time,
less on the tools.
Yeah, time is of essence, I would say then. So I think it depends on where you are in your journey, always, and your comfort level. And if you're not a tradie, I would suggest probably not doing anything on the tools.
DIY.
But all these beautiful shows online will tell you otherwise.
If you look in the YouTube video, just look at my face. We're doing, yep. I don't know if we're going to go there straight away, but yes, lesson learned.
Yeah.
Do you want to go back on the tools?
No.
I hire you.
No, definitely not. I don't think you can pay me enough to go back through that journey. Put that one behind us.
Let's unpack a little bit there. So you didn't buy, so Nicole joined you on the 3rd property. So you had
Correct.
your first 2 properties at the start. Look, what we've been hearing a lot on this podcast and our sister podcast, the Smart Property Investment Show, is that off the plan is not really where you should go. Do you want to unpack this one? Because your first one went really well, and then your second one brought you back to reality, I guess.
And funny enough, some of our clients have had the same thing. Their first one might have done really well, and then they've done it again and again, and it's not, and they get stuck. So I think this is a great topic to unpack. Yeah,
totally. So look, part of the reasons for why I did what I did at the time was I didn't have a large deposit, nor did I have any accessibility to family, guarantors, that sort of stuff. So I had to fend for myself on that front. And because I wasn't as educated as I am today.
And mind you, there was not a lot of education platforms like we have today.
Yeah, the things that were available was just magazines, really, and
people you knew, and if you could get into a seminar.
Events or a seminar, the good old seminars, totally. And so based on the options that I had available to me, given the funding, given my limited knowledge, the idea came about that why don't you buy something off the plan? It's low maintenance, it's brand new, you're not going to have any sort of maintenance issues. You're going to get maximum taxable deductions.
Depreciation.
You get this fancy graph of, if the market projects 6% growth year on year, what it's going to be worth in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. And then it all looks very great.
That's how they hook you in,
That's exactly how they hook you. They hook you on an emotional perspective.
They hook so many people still to today on that.
Yeah, look, it's a bit of a tricky one, that one. I think for some people, off the plan could work. I'm always worried about the quality of new builds. That's my worry. And that's something I've learned through, this platform. I agree with you. I think the education side lacked. And even today, I think for first-time buyers, we could provide more education.
So, yeah, just to kind of recap. So, build quality, as a lot of people probably realize, you've got the incurrences of like Mascot Towers, the apartment complex at Homebush, which had serious defects. And we're talking brand new complexes, like they're not 30, 40 years old. So build quality is definitely one in question. So people, just need to, I suppose, be wary of who's actually doing the work and whether or not they are a reputable company, because not everyone is. There's good operators and bad operators.
And this is something like when, my fiance and I were doing our research, because, I work here, we were very aware of. And this is something I really want to flag with our listeners. Do your research on who's the builder and who's the contractors, because this is going to be like a mad decision into whether or not you will buy this property. So we were looking into Zetland, and at one stage, one of the agents kept pushing for us to come to see a property which was really, kind of an eye candy property, if that makes sense. It was a 2-bedroom plus a study, quite affordable, in a nice area. And I was like, this is red flag. It's too good to be true.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, can you give me the name of the builder? And she refused. She didn't want to give me the name of the builder because she knew.
It would just...
She knew.
Yeah.
And I ended up having to say, look, you don't give me the name of the builder, I'm not even considering coming to see the property.
Yeah.
This. And then she gave me the name. And it was one of those that were in the media that fled the country because it was just that bad. And I answered, I was like, look, I'm sorry. There's no point for me in wasting my time, no use. I'm not coming in. So look at who built that property.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting one, right? And I think the importance is, especially if you're going to be buying new or off the plan, then that definitely needs to be considered.
How different was it for you guys to buy, that first property solo and then having Nicole join you on the process as a couple?
Different. You can only...
I think it made, by the third property, it's like anything really. When you do something for the first time, you're nervous, you're unsure, but you do it anyway, whether it's, like driving a car or walking, anything really. And by the time you keep repeating it, you get more comfortable with it. Now, by the time we did the third property, that was a freestanding home. Our risk appetite grew based on the confidence and given my trade background. So we were decided we wanted to renovate. And
we also had the budget for it. So the cash.
We did. We had the savings, and that's
because we combined.
Before we actually purchased the property.
I think that's where it comes, also for listeners is it's all good that you want to renovate a property, but how much cash do you have to renovate it up front?
Yeah, you got to make sure you got realistic budgets.
Yeah.
But that was your first one, Nicole.
I know, but I think this is where I would educate anyone who's listening is it's all well and good to have these inspired dreams, as everyone does, especially when you're beginning. But you need to be realistic on your budget.
Yeah.
And how much upfront cash do you actually have for that to be able to be done?
So how much did the reno, like how much extra was the reno? And look, you did a lot yourself.
Yes,
Back
we
then, yeah.
did a lot of DIYing.
So, like in terms of like time and value for money plus the extra cash you had to foot the bill, was it really worth it?
Did you take the honours?
I feel like this is such a topic because when you're a beginner to maybe medium, intermediate, what do you want to call it, investor, you're going to say yes, it is. It's so worth it. It's worth having even the boots on the ground kind of approach. But when you become an intermediate to an advanced investor, the answer is no. Always no. It's like in business, the same thing. If it's going to take up your time, how much is your time worth versus somebody else's that you can pay to do the job properly? And I think in business, investing, or anything that you're doing that involves you putting your own money down to grow it, that's what you're going to come down to. Is it worth your time or somebody else's time to do it properly, to get the job done in X amount of time so that you can get a tenant in and get money back? You know what I mean? And I feel like this is a conversation that you'll hear two sides. If you go to a renovating podcast or a show, they'll be like, yeah, you should DIY, you should do this, you should do that. Even these beautiful shows that we have on the television, right? They're telling people where to go and, you can get this and that. You can get discounts and stuff if you start being part of this type of group or whatever it is, right? Power Pass for Bunnings, right? And stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to, is it worth your time and do you have the skills for it? I think that's what I would give back now versus when I was young and pretty much just like early 20s. I was like, yeah, sure, we have the time. Let's do it ourselves. And we didn't have the money to pay everyone. And plus Michael was a tradie. He had tradie friends. We got everyone in. It was a case of beer for him. You know what I mean? Like they needed to cut down the trees. You got your mates down, they cut down the trees. We needed a plumber. He got his mate in, it was just like.
You've got great mates. Can I have them? like.
But at the end of the day, it depends on who you are, who you, I guess, yeah.
Who you know.
But at the same time, now looking from it, I wouldn't do that. I would, and I do it for my investors who come on board now, is we get the professionals to go in there. It's timed. It's very specified what they're doing. It's written out pretty much. If anything else is found, it's talked about. And there's a budget. There is a budget. And we like to always, if we're renovating for somebody who has a strategy that they want a cosmetic renovation or a structural renovation, we have the expectations there and we're trying to meet them.
Yeah. I think the important thing to capture is that everyone's got to start somewhere, right? Not everyone has the lineup of trades,
yes,
the funds behind them.
Exactly.
So where you can add value, if you've got the time, by all means, you do it. Now, if you want to pursue the career or the path of renovating and continue doing so, by all means, you will learn, you'll make mistakes. It's natural progression. I mean, in our first, did things go smoothly? No, a lot of it was emotionally driven based on what we would perceive ourselves to want in the property, let alone what the actual demographics to the area. And so there's some lessons. Again, timeline expectations. We had set initially, I think it was like 6 weeks for the start to finish of the reno, but being our first reno, we didn't have the foresight as to what could go wrong should things happen. So natural progression, we started on bathroom renovations, kitchen renovations, and then we found there were other bigger issues that weren't picked up. And I still remember to this day getting a building and pest report on the property, but never actually going to the extent of picking it apart the way I do these days, which I knew it was necessary at the time, but you don't realise the importance until you're then faced with major and significant costs or surprises that you never anticipated for. And when that starts hurting the budget and you go over what you initially prepared for, then it starts getting stressful. You get tired because you're working, you're doing this on the side, you're trying to lay yourself the foundation. But all of these things come from just learning and the mistakes you make so you don't repeat the same things again.
Which is a great segue here. When you're going to inspect some properties, it's a nice feeling, you basically project yourself, like whether or not you could live there, or, if you're going into the investment side, you're like trusting like either a buyer agent or a real estate agent to show you a video, yeah? What should you look for when you are doing those inspections that could then later on be bigger issues? Like, what are those ones that you should, do not only look at the cosmetics, but like open, the cupboards and really look into it. So which areas, what is the non-negotiable that you need to look at?
Totally. So there's probably there's probably about five key areas that I'd start with. So one of the more important one is obviously the roof, the condition of the roof. Is it sound? Is there leaks? Are there any sort of corrosion? Has the property got flashing? For those people that or the listeners that don't know what flashing is, it's basically a lining that goes beyond, just inside between the rafters and the actual outside aspect of the roof.
How old is it?
Not all homes have that, but also the condition of the gutters, because these are the things that eventually, if they're not picked up front, could lead to moisture issues. Now, a common thing we see, blocked gutters and drains full of leaves. Eventually, when there's heavy downpours, the drains themselves, they don't keep up. What then happens is water starts pooling into the fascias, and then if it's significant amounts, then it starts going into the building itself. So we want to try and avoid that at all costs. Moving on to the second part is the foundation. So things like your stumps. Is the property on a slab? What condition is it all in? Is it sloping? Is it cracking? Are certain stumps sagging, or are they completely affected by things like termites? Which brings me to point number 3, termites and borers. I mean, especially across Australia. If the conditions are right, then you can have termite damage in properties, and that's one that can sometimes be missed if you don't know what you're looking for.
Well, it's not only termite damage. I will come back to fungal as well, and borers, and also wood rot.
Yeah, so all of those things there are things that are preventable if you take the right recommendations up front.
And very easy to spot as well. Moisture, wood.
So what's just spots on the wall or something like that?
Just if there's moisture happening from leaks or whatnot, and there's wood around, you just got to get that looked at.
Yeah, so the fourth probably one is moisture and wet areas. So, for example, your most common area to kind of fail after a while is your bathrooms.
Yeah.
And if you don't maintain that, it could potentially go into a more bigger issue. So it could be something as simple as, say, a regrout or reseal, which in turn is only going to cost you about $1,000 depending where, of course, and who you engage. Or you could get it to a far worse level where it could lead to significant issues where all of a sudden you're faced with like a $30,000 bathroom reno because you've got to absolutely rip everything out and start again. So you just got to know and understand, well, at what stage is the bathroom? Is there higher moisture levels and what there should be?
Yeah,
and
that's
how
why
far along
moisture testing readings are so important as well, because somebody might have just painted the place for sale. It looks great and glam, and that where they might have had a bit of discoloration is gone, right? So you wouldn't know, right? But a moisture reading will pick up that there's been moisture there. So you want to look into it, and usually building and pest inspectors inspect it a little bit further, or give you a recommendation to do so if they couldn't get to the spot, right? But you can.
Yeah. Look, I mean, especially when it comes to the foundations, an important thing from that as to how to navigate it, because it'll come up as a major defect, as an example, and it could be an easy fix or it could be a bit more complicated. Now, to give the listeners some context, for example, if it's a raised property that it's sitting on stumps, on the far side, it could be a high Queenslander where you've got heaps of room where you can stand under the house. Otherwise, if you're sort of East Coast based or Victoria based, you can have stumps, which is elevated, say, 0.5 metre off the ground. Now, there's a key difference here, because if you're having stump issues on the lower set of the property, not always is that as easy to fix as a high set. So sometimes, to that extent, you may need to rip up the actual floor to fix those structural issues. Yeah. And if you're not familiar with that, it's like, oh yeah, but so and so said that you can address stump issues without any issue, without any.
I think it comes down to the access. What access do you have to get to these properties?
Totally.
Yeah.
And then probably the last one I would say, which freaks out a lot of people, is asbestos. Now, across the country, asbestos is probably in majority of homes, especially the older ones, pre-80s build. But what gets misconstrued by a lot of people is that asbestos needs to be removed, when in many cases, as long as it's untouched, it's
fine.
It's perfectly fine.
We had
better
this
not to touch it.
Yeah, look, we had this, our properties from 77. So there is traces of asbestos on the roof and the balcony. They're doing the roof again now, so I need to double check. I need to double check after if they've moved it or not. But same, the balcony is like, it's those red tiles. So you just don't touch it.
Yeah.
And if you don't touch it, it's just traces. I'm like, and look, at the end of the day, everybody has to die from something.
Totally.
But yeah, look, really great tips there. But those ones are stuff you got to ask, the agents, no? Because it's not, the moisture, you can see it. But what it is, what roof, slabs, and all of the other ones, there is that trust that you need, or do you pick that on from the building pest inspection report?
I feel both, right?
Look, so, you can certainly ask the questions, but in this day and age, what I've noticed dealing with a number of agents is either they don't know themselves because they don't go to that level of due diligence, and secondly, they don't want to have that liability. So they leave it up to you as a buyer to do your own due diligence.
Unless it's buy as is, they will usually know what's wrong with it, and they're just usually honest that you're buying as is because it's uninhabitable or something like that.
Exactly. So this is where it really comes down the important factor of who you engage to your building and pests, because if you engage someone who is just going to go out and print you a report and say, yep, I've done my inspection, this is it, and not go to the extent and due diligence level that you want to identify structural issues, moisture issues.
Even the minor issues, looking in cupboards, under sinks.
Yeah, just
minor things.
All the essentials that you would typically look for.
Even the finishings. When you open up cupboards, sometimes when people have done renovations, inside the flooring hasn't been done. And if there's been a termite thing, there might be holes in the flooring to go through because they've made it all look pretty, but no one's really looked into the cupboards and then go, oh. And then the good pest inspector always, flags these things. But
so I suppose the building and pest inspector's job is really to flag and highlight any anomalies or defects with any sort of property. Like that's their job is to paint the picture that it's, in the worst form.
So what do they need to look at? Like what areas are they looking at?
Everywhere. They look at the boundary.
Basically, anything on the
inspector.
lot that you're looking to secure, they'll go through and look from the fence all the way through to the driveway, the structure, the front fence, your letterbox, all the way through
the whole property
from top to bottom in terms of the house. Now, what I will share is a bit of an example as to how important that really is, because we had a circumstance where we found a property. This was actually for a client of ours, and everything looked really Mickey Mouse. Like it was renovated really nicely, brand new kitchen, brand new bathroom, all these flush colours, and everything looked great. It was a pretty newish type property too,
Yeah,
4-bed, 2-bath on a 700 odd square metre parcel of land. And the agent, whether he knew or did not know, I mean, that's neither here nor there, but part of the due diligence process is to, find out. And we went to the extent of getting the property inspected. Everything looked fine. It was only until we got one of our trusted building pest inspectors out there where he started fishing around, and I remember he called me up. He's like, "There's no manhole here in this property." And a manhole, for the people that are listening, is just an area that you can access into the roof space just to make the inspection of the roof
And it can
trusses.
be anywhere in the house.
Normally you find it in your laundries and garages. And so in this particular instance, that raised a bit of a concern. And only until he got onto the roof, where he actually pulled up one of the sheets to have a bit of a look, we discovered that the property had some damage. Now, what happened as a result of that, previous few years earlier, there was actually a building fire. So what has happened, we found out that the previous owner didn't have insurance, did it on the cheap, and never got the roof trusses properly replaced. So there was an element of structural integrity that potentially was being risked. Now, more often than not, we are able to, use that to advantage. But in this particular instance, when structural items are beyond the scope, then it's naturally a red flag. And this is why sometimes it's so important to get these inspections, to understand what exactly you're getting yourself into, because if you don't, anyone could have come in and bought that property, not done that check, and then be faced with a whole bunch of headaches down the line.
Also, getting a good building inspector, not one that's just going to say, "Oh yeah, sorry, that wasn't available, couldn't see it," because there's a few that might not look behind things, or might not. If the manhole wasn't there and he wasn't a proper good inspector, he might have just said sent you still the report and saying couldn't get in, was not available.
No access.
No access available, or something like that. And then you'd be like, what does that mean? How do I get the whole thing looked at, kind of a thing? And I think that's where it really is important who you choose to do your building and pest. Sometimes the cheapest isn't the best. The more reputable one, who has maybe the better Google reviews, or the one who has, other sales agents or property managers who are vetting for them, might be the one to go with. And they might be a little bit more expensive, and the downtime might be a little bit longer as well, because they're known and needed. So I think that's where it's really important as well, just vetting for the better ones.
I mean, when you're ready to spend $1 million on a house, you know what I mean? You shouldn't be crying for $500.
Totally.
So it's, saving a couple of hundred can later down the road make you spend thousands.
People do funny things.
I know, but
So, they might be all good for this, and then they not good for that. I don't know.
Yeah.
If people do funny things, and this is why it's just important to vet for people. And hey, maybe the cheapest one might have the best Google reviews, and he might be really good, and he might actually be the one that other agents or other even investors, because you've got groups of investors who might even recommend you the same one. He might be the best one to go to. Go to him. It's fine. Not saying that it's always bad price, but I would be wary of somebody who's got a 3.5 star review, has more than 100 reviews, and the last 3 months the reviews are they didn't pick up on this, they didn't pick up on that, they didn't do this, they didn't do that. Well, maybe something's happening to them even at home, that they're not doing a good job.
Yeah, do your due diligence.
Just do your due diligence behind trades.
Now, look, 3/4 of the population is not on the trades, yeah? So, when you get that report back, it's very hard to understand sometimes what it means.
100%. A lot of people are so scared.
And we run it through ChatGPT to understand it.
I think naturally that's what most people do, yeah.
Hey, gotta use AI, yeah? But you know what I mean? We didn't, and I think I still don't know, you know what I mean? it's still like, very difficult sometimes to understand whether or not this that was pointed out is an issue.
I 100% agree with you.
So how do you read those reports? What's the red flag and what's those like yellow orange flag that could be, yeah, that's fine?
Yeah, look, to be honest, I personally, I'm going to go first because Michael can talk about this all the time, all day.
Till the cows come home.
Yeah. If you don't know how to interpret the reports and you don't have anyone interpreting them for you, just get onto the phone with the building and pest inspector and just talk to them, because they know that you probably don't understand it that much, and maybe something that looks really, really scary isn't that scary, okay? And they will be able to explain it to you a little bit from maybe a terminology that you would understand. But if you have somebody like Michael and your team that can probably read these reports, and you don't even have to throw it through ChatGPT, good for gold. You're paying for his services, so.
Look, what I will say on the back of that is, having read so many reports, like I'm talking thousands, there's so many nuances and differences that you spot, right? You sometimes you think, wow, like this is, you can't even make this up. But what I will say is that everyone's got a different risk tolerance to, how you approach a building or a property, right? Some people are very passive. They're like very low risk tolerance. So even things like cosmetic items can really trigger it. Then you've got your purchasers. They're a little bit, they understand there's wear and tear. That's just property. You got to allow for a bit of maintenance and sometimes a little bit of elbow grease to do certain things. But then you've got the individuals or couples that have got a high tolerance, right? And I suppose it's just understanding your own individual tolerance as to, well, where do we draw the line? Like, is it at cosmetic, or is it, look, cosmetic issues are fine, but structural are a deal breaker? Or like, do you go to the extent, well, hey, like for example, my tradie background, I've got a higher risk tolerance because I've been around a lot of these things. So naturally I'm like, look, even major issues themselves, whilst they are concerning to a degree, a lot of the times you can navigate them if you know how to do it and go through the process and have the right team. Now, in relation to the building and pest inspector himself, I mean, his job is to highlight and categorize what's significant, what's maybe not as significant, and probably most importantly, what the safety hazards are. So he'll do that and break it down into major, minor, and safety, and then you'll have your cosmetic bits and pieces there. And in all those reports, if they are major, he will flag and usually, or he or she will take photos to support that. And they also usually have recommendations as to what they would do. Now, from time to time, if you're reading that, yes, there's a lot of jargon, a lot of building layman's terms. For someone like myself, because I've read so many, it's pretty second nature. But I understand from someone who hasn't ever read one, it's like, what does this mean? Does this mean I need to bulldoze a house, or like, where do I draw the line? So part of that is guiding the investor or the purchaser on that. And as Nicole touched on, it's, if you're unsure, ask the question, have a chat with the inspector, say, hey, can you explain this to me on a more simpler level so at least I can understand? Are we talking about, is it fixable for one? Is it something that can be negotiated on? Then you go back to the vendor, because everyone that sells a property has some underlying motive. And it's just also about understanding, well, why are they selling? Is it, because they're testing the market? Are they under financial distress? Whatever it may. And everyone's got that motive. So if you can find a way, even if a building and pest report, for example, doesn't show favorably, you can still use that leverage to your advantage if you understand and can find a happy median.
Well, that was going to be my next questions. To what extent can you use those building and pest reports, or even a strata report, to actually like negotiate your property price? And how do you do that successfully?
So I would say a sassy or an advanced investor will get very happy when things get flagged, and it would make them excited. Or even a BA, that they know how to use it as a tool for negotiation. And how you use it, like Michael said, it just depends on who is selling, why are they selling. And sometimes in a hot market, they might not budge. They'll go, I'm not doing anything because I know I can get somebody else who will get a higher price because the market's just keeps going up. So they might not budge. But then you might have somebody who's willing to do bits and pieces, right? And they'll rectify the works themselves or reduce the price on quotes. Now, I always say when something gets flagged, what we do is further investigation. That's all it is the first time, because it might just need a little bit of rectifying, or it might need a lot of rectifying, or it might need actual proper trades going in and doing jobs. There's a difference between patch jobs and actually doing the jobs properly. And so it's just knowing the extent of the works and how much it's going to cost. And also sometimes when the vendor will say, oh, they're happy to rectify, get it in writing. What are they rectifying and how are they rectifying it? Because what they might be rectifying versus what you think might be getting rectified might not be that same level of understanding. And you want to make sure you're on the same page, because when a pre-settlement inspection comes and it's not on how you thought it was supposed to be versus what they've done, then it's sort of like, well, okay, hold on. Was there something in writing? Perfect, there was. It needs to be to this standard. And if it's not, we're not settling until it's to that standard. What I mean by that is we have had an example of one of our clients that he was purchasing something that the floors needed to be rectified. They weren't rectified to the standard of a rental property that should. There was what we'd call lumps in the carpet. The carpet wasn't laid properly. And the switches
electrical switchboards.
There was a few electrical things as well. But we didn't settle. We delayed settlement by quite
I think it's about 2 or so months. We just, because the quality of the work wasn't up to standard.
And what we had in the agreements, that X, Y, Z had to be done up to this type of standard. And it was flagged at the building and pest. The building and pest inspector took photos. There was gaps here, there's this, that's not done properly. There's going to be issues with this, and this is the stuff that comes up. And it's what Michael said. To what extent are you comfortable?
Yeah.
What I would say to that is the findings in a building and pest report, I'd go to saying that 80% of the items that are usually listed in there are rectifiable. Although naturally, because people who are buying these properties don't have either the skill set or the confidence or the trade availability to know how to navigate this space, they naturally just want to pull the pin and walk away from the deal. Like, we've had countless opportunities like that where an agent has given us a call saying, hey, this one's fallen over. It just needs something very, very light. Like, I'm talking like $2,000-$3,000 and it's perfectly fine. But yet people have walked away from rusted screws on the roof, and you just got to think to yourself, well, this comes back to the risk appetite where you kind of draw the line, and just being able to navigate that, having that conversation, and knowing where you stand. Because like Nick said, if certain things aren't done to a quality standard, then you've got the ability, if you've obviously satisfied the condition, if you made that request that this needs to be rectified and they've agreed, then you've got every right for them to do it up to a compliant standard.
Now, look, when you are a first-time buyer, going into negotiation, first of all, is really hard.
Yeah.
You don't really know how to negotiate, and you are so scared of losing the deal because usually, especially in today's market, you've been going into inspection for like weeks and weeks and weeks.
Yeah.
Like every Saturday you're going to like visit stuff. Or if you are going through the rent vesting side, your buyer's agent has been sending you properties. It's scary to go into negotiation. And we did we've just released a negotiation episodes, but how would you approach those like built, I would say defects kind of into your negotiation project as a first-time buyers, knowing that you're basically scared or ready to go into negotiation?
Yeah. So I would say the first thing you got to start with is understanding, well, what is the issue? And firstly, is it fixable? Because I think that's going to be the first port of call. If we're dealing with major structural issues where it's either not fixable or, like the example I shared earlier, well, they're complete immediate red flags. You don't even want to, explore that, especially as a first-time buyer. And then the second part to that is if you are able to then, you understand what the issue is, how easy or quickly can it be resolved, and potentially how much? Because if we're talking a few $100, then is it really, much of a muchness in the scheme of buying a $1 million property or whatever it might be? Or is it going to cost you $50,000? Like, there's obviously a distinction you've got to draw. And in terms of how do you navigate, well, I think especially as an investor, you can lean into, say, your property managers to see if they've got trades or any sort of experience in terms of, well, have you had this issue before? 9 times out of 10, they've probably faced it, whether it's a hot water unit that needs replacing or a oven or cooktop.
Yeah, grouting.
Like these are the things that come with owning a property that from time to time you're going to need to spend a little bit of money to maintain these assets. And if you get that understanding, then it makes the journey a little bit less stressful. Obviously, if you're sorting your trades and whatnot on the fly and you don't have that sort of network or trusted relationship that you can lean into, it makes things a little bit more difficult. But
yeah, because
sounds familiar.
Because it's getting quotes that might be difficult for you, because if a trade doesn't know you, they might go, well, it's going to up front, I'm going to call that fee or something like that. And every trade wants to get paid, but let's be honest.
Yeah, no one likes giving out free quotes, and you can only do that so many times before you start upsetting a few tradies. But also what I would say for a first-timer is get on the Facebook groups. There's so many out there. I'm sure someone in the area of where you're purchasing has had a plumber, an electrician, a carpenter. Sometimes that can be very useful, and if they've had a good experience, then they're very much likely to advocate for whoever they engaged. Inversely, they may also say, stay away from this person. But look, you just got to try and understand it to the same level as perhaps, a tradie as to, how they would approach it. Like, is it a simple fix? Is it a fix that is unknown, or is it a complete no, that like it's a non-negotiable? We can't navigate this.
I've got like this podcast is for first-time buyer, whether they are going to buy to own and live in that property, or whether they will become an investor for the first time buying that first reinvesting property. I want to talk about those investors, those first-time investors. To what extent can you trust a video sent from a buyer's agent and a person building reports, without seeing that property, which I think is something that can be even, adding more pressure for those first-time investors, because you're buying that first, which is scary as it is. You're spending a lot of money and you don't even see the property.
Yeah, I think for starters, you would have vetted your buyer's agent, because they're advocating for you. Like, we are working for you in your best interest. That is why you have hired us. So hopefully there's some trust already built in. If not, maybe the first point before even getting the property sent to you is just laying the grounds and foundations of just a relationship of trust. Or if you're unfamiliar with the process, ask them what their process is first, so you don't feel rushed. And we've had that. For some first-time investors. I've gone over what report they would receive from us, just a heads up, so that they understand what, if a property comes up in their brief, what they're going to be looking in, and the questions that might follow, right? And so they're already a little bit heads up kind. Others don't have the time for that, and they're just happy when we present it done and dusted. So I think it depends on what kind of personality you are. And when it comes into, I guess, back to the video, right? Usually the video is shot by somebody who is on the ground. If it's not a pretty video, usually it's off your iPhone or whatnot, and it's showing you exactly how it looks, right? If the video was done 2 years ago, I would be suggesting you get some a video that is done
something a little bit more recent.
And not those polished videos that you see on YouTube that are like beautiful, glamorous, because they actually might have some AI now inputted into them with furniture and whatnot, right? So I would be just going off the iPhone, or you can ask for a real-time video. So the sales agent, when they're out there next, can do a real-time video. But at the end of the day, those real-time videos, they take up agents' times, and they usually, before even...
They outsource it.
Yeah, before they even like put it out to the market, they usually have a video ready to be sent to whoever, because they've either a buyer's agent's given the brief, and that brief has been like, oh, that would suit that client. Okay, no problem. I'll go down on Friday, get that video for you. You send it over. You'll let me know if your client's interested, right? And so it's just done that way versus somebody who, has been putting the, I guess, property onto the market. And there's two different markets. Owner-occ and investor sometimes are different markets for the agent. Because if the agent knows that they want to get an owner-occ, they want everything to be pretty and that emotional phase, and they will get those prettier videos. They'll make sure everything's styled and everything looks great, and they'll tell the sales agent to, maybe rectify a few of the things that are in the property that they can see, right? Get a new paint job, get the kitchen a little bit neater and stuff like that.
The ones that flag it mid-video.
Right? Whereas when you have something that's already been lived in, more for an investor, they'll walk through with the camera and it'll be like, okay, yes, that switch might be coming off the wall, but that's okay. We'll get that rectified. Or the door opening, door is a little bit of an issue. We'll rectify that. Or we'll look, that is something that will come up, right? Sometimes you're okay as a self to get that done, right? But those type of videos versus the glam videos, very different. It depends what market you're going into. And are you using a buyer's agent for your own home, or are you using a buyer's agent for an investor? Very, very different. Not emotional, I would say. Analytical.
And emotional, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of first-time buyers sort of cross-wire that, and it's uncrossing those wires, being like, videos, yeah. Photos, yep. You see what you see, that's what you get, but where is it coming from is the source. I would be suggesting to be going, is it a glammed up one, non-glammed up one?
Yeah. I mean, to your point there, if you are going to be living in the home, I can understand completely why you'd want to walk through that to feel it and envision yourself living there. Whereas from an investment perspective, it really is about what that property is going to do for you. And as Nicole mentioned, I genuinely, the more raw the video is, and if the agent takes the time to go, okay, this could be of a maintenance item to consider, and goes through and does the whole 360 in each room, as opposed to like the really rushed video agents that just go, oh yeah, this is it. Because what a lot of those agents sometimes do, they know that there are either, cornices that are damaged or a hole in the wall, and they're not going to show you that on video. So you can't take that as gospel. You want to either get someone that's going to vouch for you to be able to do that on your behalf. Now, another pitfall that I want listeners to take away is a common trap that I've found is sometimes owners who are selling the property will get their own building and pest inspection.
Yeah.
And now they'll say, oh yeah, the property's perfectly fine, to try and not get you to do your own. But we've gone down this route numerous times, not only in our own portfolio, but that to us is a non-negotiable, that even still we want to get our own independent opinion and not have that conflict of interest.
100%.
And there have been times where owners have sent us reports, then we get our own trusted advisors in, then it's a completely different picture. And you start really understanding, well, how many people actually fall for this sort of stuff? There must be heaps. And that's the importance of that in being able to put yourself in a more educated position.
Yeah. And usually if you're going down the BA path, they will usually have somebody else inspect it, like who is there, feet on the ground as well.
Eyes and ears,
Yeah, the property. So it's sort of like it's more of a safety blanket than you yourself not using one. And that's fine. You don't need to use one. You just need to know that if there is a building and pest done prior to it, you get your own as well.
Well, it's always back to like having that trusted team of experts next to you, yeah, and choosing the right people.
It's choosing the right people.
That intrinsic trust.
One thing I want to touch base, and I think that's probably our last segment for today because we've been talking a lot, which I love. But we were talking a little bit about risk and risk aversion, yeah, and to what extent you, as a first-time buyer, are tolerating risk and renovations, which I'm going to put a little bit of my own journey in it. So the listeners know we've bought something that needs reno, a bathroom and a kitchen reno. We knew it. Now we were very, very 1,000 miles away to understand it. Yeah. So in between knowing and understanding how it works, there's a world which we are learning the hard way. So that's my little word of caution for my listeners. It takes way more time to do reno and costs more money than what you expect. Now, you've guys done it many, many times. What's your best tip if our listeners want to go through a little bit of a reno, which technically it's supposed to be cosmetic reno, but seeing the number of trades involved, this is proper reno.
What I would highly recommend is maybe don't go full throttle into a cosmetic or structural reno straight off the bat. However, if you are going to go down that route, you really need to set yourself a bit of a plan as to, well, what's a budget that you're going to be comfortable with, and then put at least 20-30% of a buffer on top of that. Timeline, double that, because you don't know what you're expecting to find, especially as a first timer. Obviously, when you've done it a couple of times, you start reprogramming your brain as to, this could come up, and you start having a bit more of a checklist. And then it's about networking, having the right trades, because especially now coming into Christmas as we're recording this, what I will say, trades, one, are absolutely busy as anything. Yeah. And secondly, they're, because of the fact that everyone wants everything done yesterday, they're charging ridiculous prices. They're inflating it because they know, well, hey, if I get this job, then I'm making, whatever it might be. They're getting a Christmas bonus included in it. So you want to be able to allow yourself enough time to be able to manage that piece and
to plan it.
And at the same time, if you're going to be doing renovations, I mean, if you've got the time to move in and plan that out, then do that first. If you don't have that luxury, then you want to start maybe trying to negotiate a longer settlement to allow you the time to be able to access the property, get a rough idea of what you want to do, get the quotes, and then still have your buffers on top of that, because without the buffers, you are going to find that you're going to be learning things quickly, and it's going to be very stressful if you're going to stick to that.
Yeah, I think that Michael has a very good point. You can extend settlements for things that aren't rectified or that were to be done by the vendor. But also I would suggest that if you are doing it yourself, if you do have a tenant, you're purchasing a property that has a tenant in and you need them to vacate the property, you do it correctly. You don't just expect on settlement they vacate. If you didn't have that in the contract, then they will be still within the property and they will not like trades going through and getting things, quotes and whatnot, because it's going to disturb them. So you need to plan that out as well. And it's not always easy to get access. They can deny access. So talking to a good property manager who understands what you want to do and achieve is a really good starting point as well, so that you are not all guns blazing and don't really know the legal side of having a tenant in. But if the property's vacant and you've got the keys, well, go for gold.
One other thing that I'll add to that is I have noticed that sometimes cost expectations can be skewed based on, what things cost.
Yeah.
And I see it all the time. Sometimes you might see something like a PowerPoint or whatnot, or even electrical, where you're like, oh yeah, it might not be that expensive, but when you really nut out to what extent you need to go to get a wiring upgrade or some fixtures and fittings, plumbing, compliance, that sort of stuff, it really can start blowing out in the thousands. And if you don't have that education piece, and I know I'm probably treading a bit
the hard way.
trying to be nice. But these are some of the things that you're going to navigate in terms of expectations around pricing.
I think so. And also, like, being on that, different states have different, regulations on what they are to be standard and compliant. And some states might have certificates that tell you what's compliant, not compliant, and, they're yearly based or whatnot. Others don't. And if you don't have knowledge in, let's say, no one's looked at the switchboard, for instance, or something like that, that could blow out for you, and you might have just missed that part. And, a good building and pest inspector will probably have a photo of the switchboard for you there and say recommendation for an electrician or something, and you just might have completely not read that part, which happens for first timers or even second timers maybe. But I think it's really important to just slow down a little bit and understand.
Another point I will add is most of the stuff that we're talking about is relative to freestanding properties. Now, when you do opt for a project in a strata complex or something that has Torrens title, there's another layer of complexity where sometimes you need to get the permission of the strata committee or the
you have
members.
to. It's not sometimes.
No,
you
sorry.
have
Well,
to.
yeah, exactly. You basically need to satisfy the community there of what your proposal is, and ensuring that it is going to be approved as well. Because if you've got neighbours who object, then you've got all these other different headaches that come with that, and you want to try and mitigate your risk as much as you relatively can.
Yeah. And every state also might have different pricing for different things. So like paint jobs, renovations for bathrooms, kitchens and whatnot, even, handymans. So
Sydney tax.
Yeah, just be expected that
Double pay.
different states have different pricings.
Yeah.
Well, check your budget, put a buffer on, double your timeline, and basically have a headache. Here we go. This is renovation like in 2025, yeah? All right, guys, look on those wise words. Thank you so much for joining me today on the First Property Buyer Show. That's all we've got time, but we'll be back next week with another episode. Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.